Following his gold medal triumph at the 1988 Olympic Games in Seoul, where he famously defeated Riddick Bowe in the super heavyweight final, Lennox Lewis made the decision to turn professional. With his towering 6'5" frame, powerful jab, and calculated ring IQ, Lewis entered the professional ranks carrying not only the hopes of British boxing, but also the expectations of becoming the next dominant force in the heavyweight division. From the very beginning, Lewis made a statement, dismantling opponents with ease, showcasing both knockout power and technical skill. Unlike many heavyweights of his era, he combined patience with precision, using his jab as a weapon to control fights before unleashing thunderous right hands that ended them. His rise would set him on a path to face the very best heavyweights of the 1990s and early 2000s, from Razor Ruddock and Frank Bruno to Evander Holyfield, and eventually, Mike Tyson. This is the complete story of Lennox Lewis's professional boxing career, fight by fight, knockout by knockout, from his debut in 1989 to his final championship defense in 2003, when he walked away as the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Fight 1, June 27, 1989, Lennox Lewis vs. Al Malcolm. Fresh off his Olympic triumph in Seoul, Lennox Lewis made his professional debut on June 27, 1989, in London, England. His opponent was Al Malcolm, a journeyman with a record of 11 wins, 12 losses, and 1 draw, brought in to provide Lewis with his first test in the paid ranks. The fight ended in bizarre circumstances. In the second round, Lewis snapped out a stiff left jab that only seemed to graze Malcolm around the eye. To the surprise of the crowd, Malcolm immediately went down and did not beat the referee's count. The result went into the books as a second-round knockout victory for Lewis, though many questioned the manner in which the fight ended. Still, it was a winning start. Lewis had his hand raised and began his professional journey 1-0, taking the first step toward what would become one of the greatest careers in heavyweight history. Fight 2, July 21st, 1989, Lennox Lewis vs. Bruce Johnson. Just 3 weeks after his professional debut, Lennox Lewis crossed the Atlantic to showcase his talent in the United States. On July 21, 1989, in Atlantic City, Lewis faced Bruce Johnson, a tough but limited opponent with a record of 5 wins, 10 losses, and 1 draw. Lewis imposed himself from the opening bell, using his long reach and stiff jab to control the range. In the second round, Lewis unleashed a chopping right hand that staggered Johnson badly. The referee quickly stepped in to wave off the contest, awarding Lewis a TKO victory. It was another confident step in his early career, moving his record to 2-0 with 2 knockouts, and showing American audiences the same blend of size, power, and skill that had made him an Olympic gold medalist the year before. Fight 3, September 25, 1989, Lennox Lewis vs. Andrew Gerard. Lennox Lewis returned home to London for his third professional bout on September 25, 1989, facing seasoned journeyman Andrew Gerard. Gerard brought with him plenty of ring experience, though his record of 10 wins, 30 losses, and 5 draws showed he had often been used as a test for up-and-coming fighters. Lewis once again showed the composure and patience that was becoming his trademark. He worked behind his long jab, steadily wearing Gerard down and setting up openings for his heavier punches. By the fourth round, Lewis turned up the pressure, unleashing a barrage of clean shots that left Gerard unable to defend himself. The referee had no choice but to step in, awarding Lewis a TKO victory. The win not only moved Lewis to 3-0 with 3 knockouts, but also handed Gerard the 4th stoppage defeat of his career. It was another sign that the young heavyweight prospect was quickly making a name for himself in the paid ranks. Fight 4, October 10, 1989, Lennox Lewis vs. Steve Garber. Just 2 weeks after his third professional outing, Lennox Lewis stepped into the ring again, this time in Hull, to face Steve Garber. Garber, with a respectable record of 13 wins, 10 defeats and 1 draw, was regarded as a durable opponent who could ask questions of an emerging heavyweight prospect. Unfortunately, no fight footage of this bout is available, but the outcome was emphatic. Lewis wasted no time in establishing his dominance, using his size and power to overwhelm Garber from the opening bell. Within the first round, Lewis connected with a crushing shot that ended the contest almost as quickly as it had begun, securing his fourth straight professional victory by knockout. The win pushed Lewis's record to 4-0, all by stoppage, and furthered the growing sense that Britain had a future world heavyweight contender in the making. Fight 5. November 5, 1989. Lennox Lewis vs. Melvin Epps. Back in London just under a month after his last bout, Lennox Lewis faced American journeyman Melvin Epps. Epps entered the fight with plenty of experience, holding a record of 14 wins, 19 losses, and 1 draw. While not a top contender, he was expected to at least test Lewis with his veteran savvy and ring know-how. The contest, however, turned into one of the more unusual episodes in Lewis's early career. After a competitive opening, the fight was abruptly cut short in the second round, when Epps was disqualified for failing to obey the referee's instructions. The bizarre ending handed Lewis his 5th straight professional win, though it was the first time in his career that victory hadn't come via knockout or technical knockout. Despite the anticlimactic conclusion, Lewis's perfect record continued, moving him to 5-0 and keeping his momentum rolling in the professional ranks. Fight 6, December 18, 1989. Lennox Lewis vs. Greg Gorell. Lennox Lewis closed out his debut year as a professional with his 6th fight, taking on Greg Gorell in Kitchener, Ontario, Canada. For Lewis, Canada wasn't just another stop on the circuit. It was where he had grown up after moving there from England as a child, and where he had first risen to prominence in the amateur ranks. It was also the country he represented when he captured the gold medal at the 1988 Seoul Olympics. Fighting in Canada carried a sense of homecoming and added significance to his early career. Greg Gorell entered the bout with a solid professional record of 21 wins and 7 losses, making him one of the more seasoned opponents Lewis had faced to that point. Gorell's experience was expected to test Lewis's composure and ability to break down a durable fighter. Lewis methodically controlled the fight, working behind his jab and using his physical advantages to wear Gorell down. By the 5th round, Lewis unleashed a brutal and calculated barrage of punches that overwhelmed his opponent. The referee stepped in to halt the contest, awarding Lewis a 5th round TKO victory. The win capped off a perfect year for Lewis, who finished 1989 with a professional record of 6-0, all but one victory coming by knockout. It was a statement that the Olympic gold medalist was transitioning smoothly into the professional heavyweight ranks, and was beginning to build real momentum toward bigger challenges ahead. 1990 was a breakout year for Lennox Lewis. No longer just a promising Olympic gold medalist, Lewis stayed incredibly active with 8 fights across the year, showcasing his devastating power, improving ring craft, and rapid rise through the heavyweight ranks. By the end of 1990, his unbeaten streak and impressive performances earned him a shot at the European heavyweight title, a pivotal moment that marked his transition from rising prospect to legitimate contender. Fight 7, 31st of January 1990 versus Noel Quarles. Lennox Lewis opened 1990 at the historic York Hall in Bethnal Green, facing Liverpool's Noel Quarles, a durable veteran with a record of 19 wins and 11 defeats. Quarles was no stranger to tough opposition, but Lewis quickly showed the gulf in class. Using his jab to establish control, Lewis began breaking Quarles down before unleashing a furious barrage of punches in the second round. The assault culminated in a big right hand that sealed the contest, forcing the referee to step in and call a halt. It was another emphatic win that highlighted Lewis's growing reputation as one of the heavyweight division's most dangerous prospects. Fight 8, 22nd, March 1990 versus Calvin Jones. Lewis's next outing came at the Gateshead Leisure Center against American heavyweight Calvin Jones, who entered the ring with a respectable record of 13 wins and 4 losses. Despite Jones's experience, Lewis wasted little time in asserting his dominance. From the opening bell, he backed Jones up with his powerful jab before unloading a ferocious barrage of punches. The assault ended with a series of clubbing right hands that floored Jones, bringing a swift conclusion in the very first round. It was another statement performance that showcased Lewis's devastating power and ability to finish fights quickly, further building momentum in his march toward bigger challenges. Fight 9, 14 April 1990 versus Michael Simawelu. Just 3 weeks later, Lennox Lewis was back in action at the prestigious Royal Albert Hall in London, facing Michael Simawelu of Zambia, who carried an impressive record of 18 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw. On paper, this was one of Lewis's toughest assignments to date, but the Olympic champion once again proved a level above. From the outset, Lewis used his jab to measure the distance before detonating a perfectly timed left hook in the very first round. The punch landed cleanly and ended the contest on the spot, giving Lewis yet another emphatic early knockout victory as he continued to storm through the heavyweight ranks. Fight 10th. 9th of May 1990 versus Jorge Alfredo de Scola. Back at the Royal Albert Hall just under a month later, Lennox Lewis faced Argentina's Jorge Alfredo de Scola, who entered the ring with a respectable record of 14 wins and 3 defeats. De Scola was no stranger to tough competition. In his previous fight, he had gone 11 hard rounds with former WBA heavyweight champion Michael Dokes, a testament to his durability and toughness. But against the fast-rising Lewis, he wouldn't get that far. From the opening bell, Lewis pressed forward with his jab and heavy right hand, dictating the action. In the very last second of the opening round, Lewis uncorked a huge looping right hand that detonated flush and ended the fight instantly. Lewis added another brutal knockout to his growing resume, reinforcing the sense that Britain had a genuine heavyweight force on the rise. Fight 11, 20 May 1990 versus Dan Murphy. Just 11 days after his devastating knockout of Jorge de Scola, Lennox Lewis was back in action at City Hall, Sheffield. Originally scheduled to face Phil Brown, Lewis instead met late substitute Dan Murphy, who entered the fight with an experienced record of 26 wins, 4 losses, and 1 draw. Murphy had a reputation as a rugged fighter, and he did his best to withstand the early pressure. Lewis, however, was relentless, working behind his jab and mixing in heavy shots to the head and body. As the rounds wore on, Murphy began to fade under the sustained attack, particularly from Lewis's punishing body punches that continually broke him down. By the 6th round, Murphy was taking heavy punishment with little response, and the referee had no choice but to step in and wave off the contest. Lewis extended his unbeaten record with another dominant stoppage, showing his ability to systematically break down durable opponents as his climb toward championship contention continued. Fight 12, 27th June 1990, Royal Albert Hall, London. Lennox Lewis's 12th professional fight came against his most experienced opponent yet, Puerto Rican veteran Aussie Jaws Ocasio, who entered with a record of 22-9-1. Ocasio was no stranger to world-level competition. He had twice defeated Jimmy Young in the late 1970s, which earned him a shot at Larry Holmes for the WBC heavyweight title in 1979. Though Holmes stopped him in 7 rounds, Ocasio went on to reinvent himself at cruiserweight. He captured the WBA World Cruiserweight Championship in 1982, making 3 successful defenses before losing the title to Piet Krause in 1984. Ocasio later challenged Evander Holyfield in 1986, losing by 11th round stoppage in a spirited effort. In 1987, he scored a notable career highlight with a split-decision victory over Dwight Muhammad Qawi, further cementing his credentials as a tough, seasoned campaigner. Against Lewis, Ocasio used all his experience to survive, becoming the first man to take Lewis the distance as a professional. Lewis boxed behind his jab, stayed composed, and earned a clear points decision after 8 rounds. While it wasn't the explosive knockout the crowd had come to expect, it was a valuable test of Lewis's patience and ring control against a crafty veteran with world championship pedigree. Fight 13. 11 July, 1990. Superstars, Nightclub, Kitchener, Canada. Lennox Lewis returned to Canada for his 13th professional contest, taking on Mike Acey, who came into the fight with a respectable record of 11-4-1. Acey had previously faced rising contender Riddick Bowe, but that fight ended swiftly, with Acey being stopped in the very first round. Lewis, looking to make another statement, controlled the action from the outset. In the second round, he targeted the body with precision and power, landing 2 brutal body shots that left Acey unable to continue. The referee waved off the contest, giving Lewis another knockout victory, and further building his reputation as a destructive young heavyweight prospect. Fight 14, 31st October 1990, Crystal Palace, London. For his 14th professional bout, Lennox Lewis stepped in against Jean-Maurice Chanet, the reigning European heavyweight champion, who carried a solid record of 24-10 into the ring. This was seen as a significant test for Lewis, not only because of Chanet's experience, but also because it offered a glimpse of how close the young Brit was to fighting for continental honors. Lewis imposed himself from the opening bell, dictating the pace with his sharp jab and heavy combinations. Chanet tried to stay competitive, but Lewis's superior size, reach, and power gradually wore him down. By the 6th round, Chanet was suffering from a deep cut over his eye, forcing the referee to halt the contest and award Lewis the TKO victory. The win capped off a highly active year for Lewis in 1990, where he fought 8 times, remained unbeaten, and established himself as one of the most exciting heavyweight prospects in the world. With momentum firmly on his side, attention now turned to 1991, which promised a blockbuster showdown in the British heavyweight scene. 1991 was the year Lennox Lewis truly announced himself on the heavyweight stage. A year packed with explosive knockouts, ruthless European title defenses, and capped off by a huge all-British showdown that had the nation buzzing. The night Lewis staked his claim as Britain's next heavyweight star and captured the British title in devastating fashion. Fight 15, 6th March 1991, Wembley Arena, London. Lennox Lewis faced fellow Brit Gary Mason, who entered the fight with an imposing 35-0 record, 32 of those victories coming by knockout. Mason had been one of Britain's most feared heavyweights of the late 1980s, but his career had already been marred by a detached retina sustained in a bout with Everett Martin in 1990. After a short retirement, Mason returned in search of glory, with the European and British heavyweight titles on the line against Lewis. The fight itself was competitive in the early rounds, with Mason's power and experience keeping him in contention. However, Lewis fought with a calculated approach, consistently targeting Mason's vulnerable eye. By the 7th round, the damage was too severe, and the referee stepped in to halt the contest, awarding Lewis victory by TKO. It was a significant breakthrough win for Lewis. Not only had he handed Mason the first loss of his career, but he also cemented himself as Britain's new heavyweight star. Mason would attempt a short comeback in the United States, winning 2 more fights, but ultimately retired for good, his eye injury too serious to risk further punishment. For Lewis, this was just the beginning of his rise to the top of the division. Fight 16, 12 July 1991, Caesars Tahoe, Outdoor Arena, State Line, Nevada. Lennox Lewis crossed the Atlantic, taking on seasoned veteran Mike Weaver, who entered the bout with a record of 35-15-1. Weaver was no ordinary opponent. He was a former WBA heavyweight champion, having held the belt from 1980 to 1982. Although past his prime by the early 90s, Weaver remained dangerous and had only recently gone the distance in a tough 12-rounder against James Bone Crusher Smith in April 1990. From the opening bell, Lewis dominated with his sharp jab and superior athleticism, controlling the pace and keeping Weaver on the defensive. As the rounds progressed, Lewis began to open up with heavier shots, showcasing the raw power that was quickly earning him a reputation as one of the division's most feared punchers. In round 6, Lewis produced one of the most spectacular knockouts of his career to date. A perfectly timed, thunderous right hand crashed through Weaver's guard, sending the former champion down heavily and ending the contest instantly. It was a highlight reel finish and a statement victory on American soil. For Lewis, this was more than just another win. It was proof that he belonged among the world's elite heavyweights and was ready to chase world title glory. Fight 17, 30 September 1991, Royal Albert Hall, London. Lennox Lewis returned to the Royal Albert Hall to face fellow Brit Glenn McCrory, who entered the fight with a record of 28-6. McCrory was no stranger to success, having been the IBF Cruiserweight champion, before stepping up to the heavyweight division in search of new opportunities. However, the size and power gap between the two men was evident from the start. Lewis controlled the early action with his jab and rangy movement, keeping McCrory on the back foot. In round 2, Lewis unleashed a trademark thunderous right hand that McCrory simply couldn't withstand. The shot floored the former cruiserweight champion and forced the referee to step in, handing Lewis a decisive stoppage victory. It was another emphatic performance from Lewis, who showed once again that his combination of power, precision, and size was far too much for most opponents to handle. This win further cemented his growing reputation as Britain's leading heavyweight force. Fight 18, 23rd November 1991, Atlanta, Georgia. Lennox Lewis crossed the Atlantic once again, this time to Atlanta, Georgia, to face fellow Olympic gold medalist Tyrell Biggs, who entered the bout with a record of 19-4. Biggs had captured the super heavyweight gold medal at the 1984 Olympics, while Lewis had famously won gold in Seoul. Biggs was perhaps best known for challenging Mike Tyson for the Undisputed Heavyweight title in 1987, where he had some early success before ultimately being overwhelmed and stopped in round 7. Like many of Lewis's opponents around this period, Biggs had also recently faced Riddick Bowe, suffering an 8th round stoppage defeat. Against Lewis, Biggs fared even worse. After a cautious start, Lewis's power and accuracy quickly took control. In round 3, Lewis turned up the pressure, flooring Biggs 3 separate times in the round with crushing shots. With Biggs unable to cope and clearly out of his depth, the referee stepped in to stop the contest. It was another dominant performance from Lewis, who once again showcased his frightening finishing ability. By the end of 1991, Lewis was rapidly establishing himself as a world-class heavyweight, and it was becoming clear that bigger challenges awaited him in the years ahead. Following a hugely successful 1991 campaign, where he claimed the British and European heavyweight titles, and established himself as one of the most dangerous contenders in the division, Lennox Lewis entered 1992 with real momentum. His performances had not gone unnoticed. By the start of the year, Ring magazine rated him as the number 9 heavyweight in the world, a remarkable rise for a man just 3 years into his professional career. At the very top of the rankings sat the established names of the era: Evander Holyfield, Mike Tyson, Riddick Bowe, and Razor Ruddock. These were the fighters seen as the true kings of the heavyweight landscape, and the men Lewis needed to beat if he was ever to become a world champion. 1992 would prove to be a defining year. It was the year when Lennox Lewis stepped out from being viewed as a promising prospect and into the conversation as a genuine threat to the heavyweight throne. And he did it by scoring a crushing victory over one of the division's top 4 fighters, a win that shook up the entire heavyweight picture and announced Lewis as a legitimate world title contender. Fight 19, February 1st, 1992, Caesars Palace, Las Vegas. For his 19th professional contest, Lennox Lewis stepped onto the biggest stage of his career so far, Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. His opponent was Levi Billups, a durable American heavyweight with a record of 16 wins and 5 defeats. Billups was no pushover. He entered the fight off the back of an impressive unanimous decision victory over former WBA champion James Bone Crusher Smith. However, his career had also shown vulnerabilities. Just a few months earlier, in June 1991, he had been stopped in 3 rounds by the hard-hitting Michael Moorer. The fight marked Lewis's Las Vegas debut, a key milestone in his rise to international recognition. However, the performance itself was not one that thrilled the crowd. Lewis dominated the contest from start to finish, controlling the action behind his jab and never allowing Billups to get into range. But despite his clear superiority, Lewis was unable to break through Billups's guard or finish the fight inside the distance. After 10 one-sided rounds, the bout went to the scorecards, where Lewis was awarded a wide unanimous decision victory. While the win kept his unbeaten record intact, it was viewed as a somewhat disappointing outing, given the anticipation of a more explosive performance in his Vegas Showcase debut. Still, Lewis had gained valuable experience, proving he could comfortably handle a tough, seasoned opponent over the full distance. Fight 20, April 30th, 1992, Royal Albert Hall, London. After making his Las Vegas debut earlier in the year, Lennox Lewis returned home to the Royal Albert Hall for one of the most significant fights of his career to date. Standing across the ring was fellow Brit Derek Williams, who entered with a record of 19-4 and held the Commonwealth heavyweight title. Williams was a solid domestic contender, but many felt he lacked the tools to truly trouble Lewis. His record already included 2 defeats to Jean-Maurice Chenet, a man Lewis had beaten convincingly in 1990 to claim the European crown. On this night, however, there was much more on the line than just the belts. With the British, European, and Commonwealth titles all at stake, Lewis had the opportunity to win the prestigious Lonsdale belt outright, a milestone achievement for any British fighter. The fight began cautiously, with the opening 2 rounds largely tactical, as Lewis worked behind his jab. But in the third, the momentum shifted dramatically. Lewis exploded with a devastating combination, landing 2 uppercuts, 1 from each hand, followed by a concussive right hand. Williams, unable to recover, was stopped for the first time in his professional career. The emphatic victory not only unified the 3 major titles under Lewis's control, but also elevated him further toward the world stage. By securing the Lonsdale belt outright, Lewis added his name to the history books of British boxing, while showcasing the kind of power and precision that marked him out as a future world champion. Fight 21, August 11, 1992, Atlantic City, New Jersey. Following his emphatic victory over Derek Williams to claim the British, European, and Commonwealth titles outright, Lennox Lewis traveled back across the Atlantic for what was very much seen as a keep-busy fight. His opponent was Mike Dixon, who entered with a record of 10-5. On paper, Dixon was not expected to trouble Lewis, but he did have some durability. He had gone the distance with both Corey Sanders and Bruce Seldon in his 2 previous outings, and had never been stopped. For Lewis, the fight came at a time when his reputation was quickly rising on the world stage. He was already ranked number 2 by both the WBC and WBO, and number 4 with the IBF and WBA, edging closer to a shot at the sport's biggest prizes. Once the bell rang, there was little doubt about the outcome. Lewis controlled the bout effortlessly, working behind his jab and imposing his size and power. Dixon was outgunned from the outset, gradually worn down under a steady barrage of punches. By the 4th round, with Dixon absorbing heavy punishment and offering little in return, the referee mercifully stepped in to wave the fight off. It was a dominant performance that reinforced Lewis's status as one of the top heavyweights in the world. Though not his toughest test, the victory showcased his discipline and consistency, keeping him sharp and perfectly positioned for the defining fight of his career that awaited just 2 months later. Fight 22, October 31st, 1992. Earl's Court Exhibition Hall, London. By late 1992, Lennox Lewis was no longer just the rising star of British boxing. He was on the verge of breaking into heavyweight superstardom. And to do so, he had to go through one of the most dangerous contenders of the era, Donovan "Razor" Ruddock. Ruddock was no ordinary opponent. In 1991, he had shared the ring twice with Mike Tyson in what were billed as eliminators for the undisputed heavyweight crown. In the first bout, Tyson had won by 7th round stoppage, a decision that Ruddock's camp fiercely protested as premature. The rematch, held just 3 months later, went the distance, with Tyson emerging victorious by unanimous decision. Despite back-to-back losses, Ruddock had proven his toughness, his trademark smash left hook, and his status as one of the most feared punchers in the division. With Tyson now out of the picture due to his conviction and imprisonment, Ruddock inherited the WBC #1 ranking. Lewis, the undefeated 1988 Olympic gold medalist, was ranked number 2. That set the stage for a massive showdown in London, with the winner guaranteed a crack at the victor of the upcoming Evander Holyfield versus Riddick Bowe title fight. The build-up was intense. At the press conference, Ruddock's promoter Murad Muhammad accused Lewis of using steroids, throwing extra spice into an already high-stakes matchup. The oddsmakers had Ruddock as the 2-1 favorite, and many believed the more seasoned contender would be too much for the relatively untested Brit. But when the bell rang, it was Lennox Lewis who announced himself as a true force in the heavyweight division. From the outset, Lewis used his thudding jab to dictate the pace and nullify Ruddock's offense. For almost the entire first round, he kept Ruddock off balance and unable to land his big shots. Then, with just 10 seconds left in the round, Lewis struck, unleashing a lightning-quick right hand that dropped Ruddock heavily to the canvas. Though Ruddock survived the count, the damage was clear. Lewis smelled blood. Early in the second, he cornered Ruddock and let loose a vicious combination that sent him down for the second time. Again, Ruddock beat the count, but Lewis was relentless. A third blistering barrage of punches floored Ruddock once more, and referee Joe Cortez immediately stepped in, waving the fight off. In just 2 rounds, Lennox Lewis had scored the biggest win of his career to date. A stunning knockout over a man considered among the world's most dangerous heavyweights. The victory was seismic. 2 weeks later, Riddick Bowe dethroned Evander Holyfield to become Undisputed Heavyweight Champion. Per the agreement, Bowe's first defense was supposed to be against Lewis. But when negotiations broke down, most notably over a proposed 90-10 purse split, the fight collapsed. Bowe even went so far as to dump the WBC belt in a trash can at a press conference, refusing to fight Lewis. The WBC responded by awarding the title to Lewis, who had earned it the hard way in the ring. Lewis, for his part, mocked Bowe with the now infamous nickname, Chicken Bowe. This was the night Lennox Lewis arrived as a world-class heavyweight, a destructive 2-round demolition that announced to the division and the world that the British champion was now a major player on boxing's biggest stage. 1994 would prove to be a pivotal year in the career of Lennox Lewis, one that tested his resolve like never before. Now an established WBC heavyweight champion, Lewis entered the year with his sights set on unifying the division and silencing any remaining doubters. But while it began as another step toward greatness, 1994 would deliver a shocking twist. A single fight that would change the entire course of his career and redefine the path to redemption for Britain's heavyweight king. Fight 25, May 6, 1994, Atlantic City, New Jersey. Lennox Lewis, WBC heavyweight title defense number 3, versus Phil Jackson. Following his impressive stoppage victory over Frank Bruno, Lennox Lewis looked set to unify the heavyweight division. Talks were underway for a blockbuster showdown with Evander Holyfield, who had just reclaimed the WBA and IBF titles from Riddick Bowe. But when Holyfield chose to step away from the sport, Lewis turned his attention to his next challenger, Phil Jackson, a little-known contender with an eye-catching record of 30 wins and just 1 defeat. Despite the numbers, Jackson's resume was thin. His only notable test had come against Donovan "Razor" Ruddock, who dominated and stopped him in 4 rounds back in 1992. Still, Jackson and his trainer Pat Burns insisted this time would be different, claiming improved preparation and focus would shock the world. But once the opening bell rang, Lewis made sure that prediction didn't last long. Within 30 seconds, Lewis landed a thunderous right hand that floored Jackson, immediately setting the tone. The British champion controlled the action from range, using his jab and power shots to systematically dismantle the overmatched challenger. Lewis scored another knockdown late in round 5 with a crisp straight right, and though Jackson bravely beat the count, he was in survival mode from that point onward. After 2 more rounds of one-sided punishment, Lewis closed the show in round 8, unleashing a vicious 4-punch combination that sent Jackson down for the 3rd time. Referee Arthur Mercante Sr. had seen enough, waving off the contest at 1:35 of the 8th round. It was another dominant performance for Lewis, who retained his WBC heavyweight championship for the 3rd time, and showcased the same frightening blend of patience, precision, and power that had carried him to the top of the division. But while 1994 started smoothly for the champion, few could have predicted the shocking twist that would soon follow. One that would send shockwaves through the heavyweight landscape and test Lennox Lewis like never before. Fight 26, September 24, 1994, Wembley Arena, London. Lennox Lewis, WBC heavyweight champion, versus Oliver McCall. After 3 successful but underwhelming defenses of his WBC heavyweight title, Lennox Lewis entered the autumn of 1994 on the verge of the biggest fight of his career. Negotiations were already complete for a record-breaking $31 million super fight with Riddick Bowe, a long-awaited clash between the two men who had met in the 1988 Olympic final. All that stood between Lewis and that career-defining showdown was a routine title defense against Oliver, the Atomic Bull, McCall. McCall, a former sparring partner for Mike Tyson, entered the bout with a modest 24-5 record and little fanfare. Most of his wins had come against journeymen, and his defeats included names like Orlin Norris, James "Buster" Douglas, and Tony Tucker. Yet, under Don King's guidance, McCall had strung together 5 consecutive wins to earn the WBC's #1 contender slot, and his first shot at a world title. Lewis, however, paid little attention to his challenger. Confident and focused on the looming Bow fight, he viewed McCall as a formality, a stay-busy bout to tick the mandatory box before moving on to bigger things. The opening round was quiet, with Lewis cautiously trying to establish his jab and range, while McCall looked composed and patient. 2 of the 3 judges gave Lewis the round, but McCall's stillness disguised his readiness. Then came the second round, and with it, one of the great shocks in heavyweight history. As Lewis stepped in behind his right hand, McCall unleashed a perfectly timed counter right that detonated on Lewis's chin. The champion crashed to the canvas, stunned and struggling to regain his footing. He beat the count, but his legs were gone. Referee Jose Guadalupe Garcia continued to count, but when Lewis stumbled forward into him, the fight was waved off. Oliver McCall was the new WBC heavyweight champion by second-round TKO. The Wembley crowd was stunned into silence. Lewis, dazed and protesting, claimed the stoppage was early, but many at ringside, including Boxing Monthly editor Glenn Leach, agreed with the referee's call, noting that Lewis had only truly regained his senses after the fight had already been stopped. The loss sent shockwaves through the division. Lewis's planned $31 million clash with Riddick Bowe was immediately scrapped, and McCall, now aligned with Don King, rejected Lewis's $10 million offer for a rematch, setting his sights instead on defending the title against other King-managed fighters, particularly Mike Tyson, who was soon to be released from prison. For Lennox Lewis, the defeat was devastating. In one night, he lost not just his title, but his aura of invincibility and the biggest payday of his career. But it also marked a turning point. The loss would drive him to rebuild under the tutelage of Emanuel Steward, leading to one of the most remarkable comebacks in heavyweight history. 1994 ended not with triumph, but with a lesson, and the forging of the steel that would later make Lennox Lewis one of the greatest heavyweight champions of all time. 1995 marked the beginning of a new chapter for Lennox Lewis. After the shocking defeat to Oliver McCall that cost him the WBC heavyweight title, Lewis regrouped, retooled, and sought redemption. Now under the guidance of the legendary trainer Emanuel Steward, the same man who once worked McCall's corner against him, Lewis set out to rebuild his reputation, sharpen his technique, and remind the world that his reign at the top was far from over. Fight 27. May 13th, 1995, Sacramento, California. Lennox Lewis versus Lionel Butler. After suffering a shocking defeat to Oliver McCall, Lennox Lewis began his road to redemption against the WBC's #2 ranked heavyweight, Lionel Butler. This bout marked Lewis's first fight under the tutelage of the legendary Emanuel Steward, a partnership that would go on to redefine his career and legacy. Butler, once a journeyman with a 6-10-1 record, had revived his career with 16 straight knockouts, earning himself a shot at contention. However, coming into the ring a bloated 261 pounds, nearly 30 heavier than his best fighting weight, Butler was no match for the sharper, more focused Lewis. From the opening bell, Lewis used his superior reach and precision to dominate, dictating the pace behind his jab and crisp combinations. In round 5, the inevitable came. Lewis floored Butler with a right-left combination early in the round, and after another knockdown late in the round, the referee waved it off at 2:55, declaring Lewis the winner by technical knockout. This emphatic win marked the first step in Lewis's rebirth under Emanuel Steward, a preview of the disciplined, devastating heavyweight champion he would soon become. Fight 28. July 2nd, 1995, Dublin, Ireland. Lennox Lewis versus Justin Fortune. After re-establishing himself with a dominant win over Lionel Butler, Lennox Lewis continued his comeback campaign, with a stay-busy fight against Australian heavyweight Justin Fortune. The bout, held in Dublin, Ireland, was another opportunity for Lewis to sharpen his tools under the expert guidance of Emmanuel Stewart as he worked his way back toward title contention. Fortune entered the ring with an 11-2-1 record, his only notable previous opponent being Buster Mathis Jr., who had stopped him in the 8th round back in 1993. Despite showing courage and aggression early, Fortune was outclassed from the opening bell. Lewis controlled the tempo behind his jab, measuring distance and looking for the perfect opening. That opening came in the 4th round, when Lewis unleashed a devastating uppercut that sent Fortune crashing to the canvas. Though Fortune bravely tried to continue, the referee stepped in to halt the fight, awarding Lewis the win by technical knockout in round 4. It was a clinical and efficient performance, another step in Lewis's rebuilding journey, as he continued to refine his power, timing, and composure under Stewart's guidance. Fight 29. October 7th, 1995, Atlantic City, Lennox Lewis versus Tommy Morrison. A fight 2 years in the making finally materialized when Lennox Lewis faced Tommy, the Duke, Morrison in Atlantic City. Once viewed as one of boxing's hottest prospects after defeating George Foreman to win the WBO heavyweight title, Morrison had seen his career derailed by a shocking first-round knockout loss to Michael Bent. But after rebuilding his reputation with a dramatic stoppage win over Donovan "Razor" Ruddock, Morrison was back in contention and ready for a showdown with the resurgent Lennox Lewis. For Lewis, this fight represented another critical step in his comeback. Despite being promised a WBC title shot following his dominant win over Lionel Butler, the belt slipped through his grasp when the sanctioning body chose to prioritize a Mike Tyson-Frank Bruno matchup instead. Frustrated but undeterred, Lewis focused his energy on making a statement, and Morrison was the perfect opponent to do it against. From the opening bell, Lewis controlled the fight with his trademark left jab, keeping Morrison at bay and dictating the tempo. Morrison, known for his dangerous left hook, tried to press the action in round 2, but was met with a sharp counter left from Lewis that dropped him to one knee and opened a cut above his right eye. From there, it was one-way traffic. Lewis dominated with precision and patience, dropping Morrison again in the 5th round with a brutal uppercut. Despite his eye being nearly swollen shut, Morrison bravely fought on. But Lewis's power and accuracy were relentless. In the 6th round, Lewis sent Morrison to the canvas twice more before referee Mills Lane mercifully stopped the fight. It was Lewis's 3rd consecutive TKO victory since teaming up with Emmanuel Stewart, and arguably the most emphatic performance of his comeback. The win sent a clear message to the rest of the heavyweight division. Lennox Lewis was back, sharper, smarter, and more dangerous than ever. 1996 saw Lennox Lewis step into the ring just once, but that single fight would spark one of the most controversial moments of his career. After rebuilding under Emmanuel Stewart, Lewis entered the bout looking to prove he was back among the elite. Yet when the final bell rang, the result split fans and pundits alike. Was it a rightful victory, or a decision that should never have gone his way? Fight 30, 10th May 1996, Madison Square Garden, Lennox Lewis versus Ray Mercer. Following back-to-back knockout wins over Justin Fortune and Tommy Morrison, Lennox Lewis entered 1996 as the WBC's #1 contender, yet found himself controversially sidelined. The WBC chose Mike Tyson to face Frank Bruno for the title, leaving Lewis furious and taking legal action to reclaim his rightful shot. When the courts ruled in Tyson's favor, Lewis turned his attention to fellow 1988 Olympic gold medalist and former WBO champion Ray Mercer. A fight intended to be a tune-up ahead of a planned showdown with Riddick Bowe later that year. But Mercer had other ideas. Despite entering off a draw with Marion Wilson and a loss to Evander Holyfield, he produced one of the finest performances of his career. From the opening bell, Mercer pushed the pace, landing crisp, accurate shots and forcing Lewis onto the back foot. Round 4 was especially fierce. Mercer stunned Lewis with a 16-punch barrage before both men traded thunderous combinations in the center of the ring. As the rounds wore on, neither fighter gave an inch. Both men's faces were swollen and eyes nearly closed by the final bell after 10 punishing rounds. The result came down to the scorecards. One judge had it level at 95-95, while the other two narrowly favored Lewis 96-95, 96-94, giving him a majority decision win. The Madison Square Garden crowd booed loudly, many believing Mercer had done enough to claim victory. Statistics only deepened the debate. Mercer landed 59% of his punches to Lewis's 44%, and connected with a remarkable 60% of his jabs, despite giving up 3 inches in height and reach. Lewis, however, had landed slightly more total punches, 235 to 223, edging the contest by the slimmest of margins. It was one of the most controversial wins of Lewis's career, a bruising reminder that no fight is ever just a tune-up. The planned clash with Riddick Bowe would never materialize, and Lewis was left to rebuild momentum once again as the heavyweight division continued to shift around him. 1997 marked a major turning point for Lennox Lewis, the year he clawed his way back to the top of the heavyweight division. After the controversy of 1996, Lewis was on a mission to prove he was still one of the elite, sharper, stronger, and now fully molded under the tutelage of the legendary Emanuel Stewart. Over the course of 3 fights, Lewis would reclaim his former WBC title and deliver dominant performances that re-established him as a force to be feared. This was the year the rebuilding stopped, and the redemption truly began. Fight 31. February 7, 1997, Las Vegas, Nevada, versus Oliver McCall, 24-5. This was more than just a rematch. It was redemption night for Lennox Lewis. 2.5 years after suffering the first and only defeat of his professional career to Oliver McCall, Lewis finally had the chance to right the wrong and reclaim his position at the top. The stakes couldn't have been higher. The fight was for the vacant WBC Heavyweight Championship, a title left open after Mike Tyson chose to vacate the belt rather than face Lewis, his mandatory challenger. The road to this moment had been filled with frustration for Lewis. After rebuilding his career with wins over top contenders and becoming the WBC's #1 contender, he watched as Tyson, who had taken the title from Frank Bruno, opted to chase the WBA crown instead, leaving the WCB belt up for grabs. The sanctioning body ordered a showdown between its top 2 ranked heavyweights, Lewis and McCall. But McCall was no longer the same fighter who had stunned Lewis back in 1994. In the months leading up to the rematch, McCall's life had unraveled. He'd been arrested for disorderly conduct and sent to rehab for substance abuse. Despite concerns from Lewis's camp, promoter Don King insisted the fight go ahead. Once the bell rang, it quickly became clear that something was wrong. Lewis dominated behind his jab and right hand, while McCall barely threw punches, landing only 26 in the first 3 rounds. Then, in one of the most bizarre moments in boxing history, McCall simply stopped fighting. He dropped his hands, turned away from Lewis, and began walking aimlessly around the ring, at one point, even crying. Referee Mills Lane gave McCall every opportunity to continue, but when it became clear he had mentally checked out, Lane stopped the bout in the 5th round. Lennox Lewis was declared the winner by technical knockout, regaining the WBC heavyweight title and avenging his only career loss. Although the fight remains infamous for McCall's meltdown, it marked a pivotal turning point for Lewis. He was once again world champion, stronger, wiser, and ready to cement his legacy as one of the most complete heavyweights in history. Fight 32, July 12, 1997, Caesars Tahoe, State Line, Nevada, versus Henry Akinwande, 32-0-1. For his first defense of his second reign as WBC heavyweight champion, Lennox Lewis faced fellow Brit Henry Akinwande, an undefeated and towering opponent who, like Lewis, possessed elite size, reach, and technical skill. The matchup carried special significance, marking only the second all-British world heavyweight title fight in history, following Lewis's victory over Frank Bruno in 1993. Akinwande entered the bout as the reigning WBO heavyweight champion, but in order to face Lewis for the more prestigious WBC crown, he was forced to vacate his belt. The fight, originally scheduled for Atlantic City, had to be relocated to State Line, Nevada, after Akinwande's promoter, Don King, was banned from promoting in Atlantic City due to ongoing legal issues. What was expected to be a showcase of British boxing turned into one of the most frustrating heavyweight title fights of the decade. From the opening bell, Akinwande offered little in the way of offense, choosing instead to clinch Lewis repeatedly whenever the champion attempted to open up with his jab or right hand. Referee Mills Lane, who, just weeks earlier, had officiated the infamous Holyfield Tyson bite fight, issued repeated warnings to Akinwande, eventually deducting a point in round 2 for excessive holding. However, Akinwande refused to change tactics, continuing to smother Lewis and grab onto him at every opportunity. Finally, after yet another long 19-second clinch in the 5th round, Mills Lane had seen enough. He disqualified Akinwande with 26 seconds remaining in the round, awarding Lewis the victory by disqualification and allowing him to retain his WBC title. The bout was met with disappointment and criticism, particularly toward Akinwande's lack of competitiveness. The Nevada Athletic Commission even withheld his $1 million purse pending review under new rules introduced after Tyson's disqualification, though it was later released in full. While the fight itself provided little drama in the ring, it nonetheless demonstrated Lewis's growing composure and control as champion. He had now defended his reclaimed crown, and his sights were firmly set on bigger challenges and greater unification. Fight 33, October 4th, 1997, Atlantic City, versus Andrew Golota, 28-2. For the second defense of his WBC Heavyweight Championship, Lennox Lewis faced the unpredictable and controversial Polish contender Andrew Golota, a talented fighter best known for his 2 infamous disqualification losses to Riddick Bowe. In both bouts, Golota had dominated the action, outboxing Bowe and leading on all scorecards before repeatedly landing low blows that caused the referee to stop the fights. Despite the controversy, Golota's skill and power had convinced many that he was one of the most dangerous heavyweights in the world. Originally, Golota was set to face Ray Mercer, but Mercer withdrew with a neck injury. Lewis quickly agreed to step in, setting up a fight that was expected to be a fierce, tactical battle between 2 of the division's elite. However, the night in Atlantic City would prove to be one of the most one-sided and explosive performances of Lewis's entire career. Before the bout, Lewis's manager Frank Maloney accused Golota of steroid use and demanded testing, but Golota passed clean. Once the bell rang, Lewis wasted no time establishing his dominance. From the opening seconds, he snapped Golota's head back with his powerful left jab and quickly forced him onto the defensive. Less than a minute into the fight, Lewis unleashed a devastating right hand that sent Golota staggering into the corner. Smelling blood, Lewis unleashed a 6-punch barrage, dropping Golota heavily to the canvas. Though Golota beat the count, he was clearly dazed and unsteady. Referee Joe Cortez allowed the fight to continue, but Lewis closed the show in ruthless fashion. A 10-punch combination crashed through Golota's guard, sending him down once more. This time, Cortez stepped in immediately, stopping the fight after just 95 seconds of total action. It was a stunning knockout, and one of the most emphatic statements of Lewis's career. The aftermath was as chaotic as the fight was brief. Golota, who had reportedly received a lidocaine injection before the bout to numb chronic knee pain, suffered a post-fight seizure in his locker room and temporarily lost his pulse before being resuscitated. He was rushed to hospital, but made a full recovery. For Lewis, it was a defining moment, a spectacular first-round knockout that reaffirmed his status as the most dominant heavyweight in the world and silenced any remaining doubts about his championship pedigree. 1998 saw Lennox Lewis continue to strengthen his grip on the heavyweight division. With 2 fights that year, Lewis aimed to reaffirm his dominance, silence any remaining doubts from his earlier career setbacks, and prove beyond question that he was the man to beat in boxing's most prestigious division. Fight 34, March 28, 1998, Atlantic City, USA, versus Shannon Briggs, 30-1. After a dominant first-round knockout victory over Andrew Golota, Lennox Lewis was set to defend his WBC heavyweight title against the outspoken and dangerous Shannon Briggs, who had controversially earned the shot after a disputed decision win over George Foreman. The bout also carried the distinction of the lineal heavyweight championship, making it one of the most anticipated fights of the year. Lewis started the fight using his trademark jab to control distance, but Briggs showed his power and aggression late in the first round, stunning Lewis with a flurry that had the crowd on their feet. In the second, Briggs again landed heavy shots that briefly wobbled the champion, but Lewis quickly steadied himself, reasserting control with superior technique and timing. From the third round onward, the tide turned completely. Lewis began to systematically break Briggs down, landing precise combinations and punishing power shots. In the fourth round, Lewis sent Briggs to the canvas twice with devastating right hands. The challenger bravely rose each time, but by the fifth round, Lewis was in full command. A thunderous right hand floored Briggs for a third time, and after one final barrage, referee Frank Cappuccino stepped in to stop the fight at 1:45 of round 5. Lewis retained his WBC crown and added the lineal heavyweight title with the victory, a commanding performance that showcased both his resilience under fire and his ruthless finishing ability. Fight 35, September 26, 1998, Mohegan Sun Casino, Uncasville, USA, versus Željko Mavrović, 27-0. With hopes of a unification clash against Evander Holyfield delayed due to Holyfield's mandatory defense, Lennox Lewis turned his attention to the undefeated Croatian contender, Željko Mavrović, the WBC's #1 challenger. Despite his spotless 27-0 record, Mavrović was largely untested at the elite level, prompting Lewis's trainer, Emanuel Stewart, to remark, "He has one of the least impressive records I've seen. There's no important names on it." Once the bell rang, Lewis dominated behind his powerful jab and superior ring generalship, dictating the pace from start to finish. He landed a series of clean right hands and heavy combinations, but Mavrović displayed an iron chin, absorbing punishment and refusing to go down. The Croatian challenger's durability was remarkable. He appeared unfazed even as Lewis poured on the pressure and threw over 500 punches across 12 rounds. Though Mavrović showed heart and toughness, he never mounted any sustained offense, landing less than half of Lewis's output. After 12 one-sided rounds, the judges awarded Lewis a convincing unanimous decision, with scores of 119-109, 117-112, and 117-111. Lewis retained his WBC and lineal heavyweight titles with another dominant display, a fight that tested his conditioning and patience as much as his power, and set the stage for the long-awaited unification showdown with Evander Holyfield. 1999 would be the year that Lennox Lewis finally earned the recognition he truly deserved. After years of chasing respect and overcoming setbacks, Lewis entered the year determined to prove he was the undisputed best heavyweight of the 1990s. Across 2 defining fights, he showcased his brilliance, cementing his place at the very top of the division, and silencing any remaining doubters once and for all. Fight 36, March 13, 1999, Madison Square Garden, New York, versus Evander Holyfield, for the Undisputed Heavyweight Championship, WBA, WBC, and IBF. After years of chasing the sport's ultimate prize, Lennox Lewis finally stepped into the ring for the Undisputed Heavyweight Championship, facing the legendary Evander Holyfield at Madison Square Garden. Lewis entered the bout as the WBC champion, while Holyfield held the WBA and IBF titles, with the winner set to become boxing's first undisputed heavyweight king since 1992. In the build-up, Holyfield boldly predicted a third-round knockout, but it was Lewis who dominated from the opening bell, dictating the pace with his jab and superior boxing skills. Lewis outlanded Holyfield heavily, winning nearly every early round and leaving the crowd in awe of his composure and control. Holyfield had moments of aggression in the middle rounds, but Lewis quickly regained command, landing crisp combinations and stunning the American champion multiple times. By the final bell, most observers, including media and fans alike, had Lewis winning by a wide margin. However, the judges delivered one of the most infamous decisions in boxing history, a split draw. Scores of 116-113 for Lewis, 115-113 for Holyfield, and 115 to 115 left the heavyweight world in disbelief. The arena erupted in boos, and commentators labeled it a travesty. Though robbed of victory on paper, the performance elevated Lewis's reputation to new heights. He had proven, beyond doubt, that he was the best heavyweight in the world, setting the stage for the rematch that would define his legacy later that same year. Fight 37. November 13, 1999. Thomas and Mack Center, Las Vegas, Nevada, versus Evander Holyfield, Undisputed Heavyweight Championship, WBA, WBC, IBF, and IBO. Following the outrage from their first encounter, Lennox Lewis and Evander Holyfield met again in one of the most highly anticipated rematches in modern boxing history. Their first fight ended in a scandalous split draw, a result that sent shockwaves through the sport. Demanding clarity, all three major sanctioning bodies ordered an immediate rematch, with both champions agreeing to an even split of the massive $30 million purse. Held exactly 7 years after Riddick Bowe had last unified the heavyweight titles, this rematch was set to crown the first undisputed heavyweight champion of the modern era. From the opening bell, Lewis fought with sharp focus and composure, using his superior reach and jab to dictate the pace. He controlled the early rounds, though Holyfield rallied in the middle stages, with bursts of aggression that reignited memories of his warrior spirit. The fight turned in Lewis's favor again in the later rounds, as his accuracy and stamina began to break down Holyfield's offense. The final rounds were fiercely contested, but Lewis closed strong, and when the scorecards were read, he was declared the unanimous decision winner, with scores of 115 to 113. 116 to 112, and 117 to 111. Lennox Lewis had finally achieved his lifelong dream, becoming the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, the first in 7 years. Though some still disputed the verdict as a make-good decision after the controversial draw, the result solidified Lewis's standing as the true king of the heavyweight division and the defining heavyweight of the 1990s. His reign as undisputed champion, however, would be short-lived. Within months, Lewis was stripped of the WBA title after refusing to face John Ruiz next. But by then, his legacy as the era's dominant heavyweight was already beyond question. As the new millennium began, Lennox Lewis stood alone at the top of the heavyweight mountain. The undisputed champion had silenced every critic and established himself as the era's defining force. In 2000, Lewis would further solidify his dominance and legacy with 3 more fights, each one reinforcing his position as the world's premier heavyweight. Fight 38, April 29, 2000, Madison Square Garden, New York, versus Michael Grant, 31-0. Contested for the WBC, IBF, and IBO heavyweight championships. After becoming the undisputed heavyweight champion, Lennox Lewis was contractually obligated to defend his titles against the WBA's top contender, originally Henry Akinwande, later replaced by John Ruiz. However, Lewis instead chose to face the undefeated American powerhouse Michael Grant, a rising star with a perfect 31-0 record who many believed could be the next great heavyweight. The decision would cost Lewis his WBA title after Don King's legal intervention, but the champion was determined to make a statement in the ring. Grant started aggressively, looking to use his size and power to pressure Lewis, but it quickly unraveled. Midway through the first round, Lewis landed a thunderous right hand that sent Grant crashing to the canvas. The challenger beat the count but was visibly shaken, and Lewis immediately unleashed another furious barrage. A second knockdown followed, and then, with just seconds left in the round, Lewis floored Grant again with a devastating left-right combination. Though Grant survived the round, he was barely standing. Lewis began the second round hunting for the finish, and with 23 seconds remaining, a brutal right uppercut ended the contest emphatically. Grant struggled to rise but couldn't beat the count, giving Lennox Lewis a stunning second-round knockout victory. This performance cemented Lewis's dominance as the true king of the heavyweight division, a ruthless champion dismantling an undefeated challenger in spectacular fashion at Madison Square Garden. Fight 39, July 15, 2000. London Arena, London, versus Franz Botha, 40 wins, 2 defeats, 1 draw. Contested for the WBC, IBF, and IBO heavyweight championships. After demolishing Michael Grant in New York, Lennox Lewis returned to London for a homecoming title defense against Franz Botha, the WBC's number 9 ranked contender. Botha had gained respect after a strong showing against Mike Tyson, dominating 4 rounds before being stopped, and followed it with a draw against Shannon Briggs and a first-round knockout over Steve Pinnell. Despite this, Lewis faced criticism for choosing an opponent ranked outside the IBF top 10. Botha, ever confident, declared, "If I don't knock him out, it's going to be a terrible beating." But it was Lewis who delivered the beating. From the opening bell, the champion controlled the fight with precision and power, landing 24 of his 47 punches, while Botha could only manage 9. Late in the first round, a heavy right hook staggered Botha, but he barely survived as Lewis pressed forward relentlessly. In round 2, Botha tried to stay on the move, but Lewis continued to stalk him. With just 40 seconds left in the round, Lewis unleashed a brutal 4-punch combination that sent Botha halfway through the ropes. Though Botha courageously climbed back into the ring, referee Larry O'Connell had seen enough and waved it off, giving Lewis another devastating second-round knockout victory. After the fight, Lewis addressed Mike Tyson's taunts following his win over Lou Savarese, firing back, "Tell Mike Tyson to either put up or shut up. He's been talking about what he can eat. I'll show him what he can eat," raising his right fist to the cheers of the London crowd. It was another dominant and emphatic statement from the reigning champion. Lennox Lewis was leaving no doubt who ruled the heavyweight division. Fight 40, November 11th, 2000. Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino, Las Vegas, versus David Tua, 37-1. Contested for the WBC, IBF, and IBO heavyweight championships. After dispatching Franz Botha in brutal fashion, Lennox Lewis turned his attention to his next mandatory challenger, the dangerous Samoan powerhouse David Tua, ranked number 1 by both the WBC and IBF. Initially, Lewis hoped to stage the bout in his boyhood home of Toronto, Canada, but promotional and logistical changes saw the fight land at the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. Tua entered the ring with an impressive record of 37 wins and only 1 defeat, having already claimed victories over future world champions John Ruiz, Oleg Moskayev, and Hasim Rahman. Known for his devastating left hook and granite chin, Tua confidently predicted an upset, dismissing Lewis as a lazy fighter with a suspect chin. He promised to knock out the champion and claim the throne for himself, but when the bell rang, it was all Lennox Lewis. Using his trademark jab and superior reach, Lewis kept Tua at bay from the very first round, landing a crisp right hook that reportedly cracked one of Tua's ribs. Despite Tua's trademark aggression, he could never close the distance on the taller, sharper Lewis. The champion completely neutralized Tua's offense, dictating the pace and outlanding him 300 punches to 110, while throwing over 670 punches across 12 one-sided rounds. There were no knockdowns, but Lewis's dominance was absolute. The scorecards told the story: 119 to 109, 118 to 110, and 117 to 111, all in favor of Lewis, who retained his titles by unanimous decision in one of the most disciplined performances of his career. After the fight, a confident Lewis turned his attention to the one man the world wanted to see him face, Mike Tyson. "If Tyson wants to come to test, I'll put him to rest. Lennox Lewis is the best." Manager Frank Maloney echoed the sentiment, saying Lewis deserves the big fight, pointing out how he'd been denied showdowns with Riddick Bowe and Michael Moorer in years past. With his decisive win over Tua, Lennox Lewis closed out the year 2000 as the undisputed king of the heavyweight division, the man who stood alone atop the mountain. As the new millennium rolled on, Lennox Lewis stood alone at the summit of the heavyweight division, respected, feared, and firmly established as the era's defining champion. But between 2001 and 2003, Lewis would face the final, and perhaps most dangerous, tests of his legacy. In just 4 fights, he would conquer a feared knockout artist, suffer one of the biggest upsets in boxing history, orchestrate a dramatic revenge mission, and survive a brutal war that convinced him it was time to walk away. These were the years that cemented his place among the greatest heavyweights ever, and the battles that nearly shattered it. This is the final chapter of Lennox Lewis's legendary career. Fight 41, 22nd April 2001, Brakpan, South Africa, versus Hasim Rahman, 34-2. Following 3 successful title defenses in 2000, Lennox Lewis entered 2001 with his sights firmly set on the super fight the boxing world had long demanded, a showdown with Mike Tyson. Lewis expected that bout to happen in the summer of 2001, but Tyson's 3-month suspension for testing positive for marijuana after the Andrew Golota fight put negotiations on hold. As Lewis waited for Tyson and even entertained a possible unification clash with WBA champion John Ruiz, he accepted a mandatory defense against relatively unheralded contender Hasim Rahman. Lewis came in as an overwhelming 20-1 favorite, but his preparation was widely criticized. While Rahman arrived in South Africa on March 27th to properly acclimate to Brakpan's 5,200-foot altitude, Lewis didn't land until April 10th. Instead of training at elevation, he chose to remain in Las Vegas, just 2,000 feet above sea level, so he could simultaneously film cameo scenes for the Hollywood movie Ocean's 11. On top of the altitude complications, the fight itself was scheduled for 5 a.m. local time, to suit HBO's US broadcast window, adding another unusual wrinkle to Lewis's preparation. Despite these factors, Lewis started the fight well. After a competitive opening round, he swept rounds 2 through 4 on all 3 scorecards, establishing a 39-37 lead. Rahman, however, had quietly begun to shift the momentum. By round 4, he was the aggressor, throwing 60 punches to Lewis's 33, matching him blow for blow and showing the confidence of a man who believed he belonged. Round 5 would change heavyweight history. Lewis spent most of the round stalking Rahman, throwing few punches as he searched for a single knockout shot, but Rahman remained composed, avoiding Lewis's power and slowly pushing him backward behind a stiff jab. With 46 seconds left in the round, Rahman backed Lewis into the ropes, and then came the moment that stunned the world. Lewis briefly dropped his hands, just for a second, and Rahman instantly launched a thunderous right hand that detonated cleanly on Lewis's jaw. Lewis crashed to the canvas, badly hurt, and struggled desperately to rise, but he could not beat the count. In one of boxing's greatest upsets, Hasim Rahman scored the knockout and became the new heavyweight champion of the world. It was a shocking end to one of the most surprising nights of the modern heavyweight era, and the beginning of a rivalry that would demand an immediate and dramatic conclusion later that year. Fight 42, 17th November 2001, Las Vegas, versus Hasim Rahman, 35-2. After suffering a shocking knockout defeat to Hasim Rahman earlier in the year, Lennox Lewis activated the rematch clause written into their first contract. Rahman, now aligned with Don King, explored several lucrative options following his title win. Showtime offered him over $19 million to face Mike Tyson, while HBO countered with a $17 million offer for an immediate rematch with Lewis. Rahman rejected both proposals, instead choosing a lower-risk bout against David Izon for $5 million. Lewis took the matter to court, and in June, a judge ruled in his favor, legally enforcing the rematch for November 17th in Las Vegas. Unlike their first meeting in South Africa, Lewis entered this fight fully focused, properly conditioned, and determined to reclaim his belts. From the opening bell, he imposed his authority, working behind a sharp, disciplined jab that immediately began controlling the distance and tempo. Lewis opened a cut over Rahman's left eye in the first round and dominated the early action, sweeping all 3 rounds on every judge's scorecard. Midway through the 4th round, Lewis found the decisive opening. He unleashed a perfectly timed left-right combination that crashed squarely onto Rahman's chin, sending the defending champion heavily to the canvas. Rahman attempted to rise, but fell back down at the count of 9, unable to continue. Lennox Lewis was declared the winner by knockout, emphatically avenging the upset and regaining his heavyweight championship. Fight 43, 8th June 2002, Memphis, versus Mike Tyson, 49-3. The long-delayed Lewis-Tyson showdown was finally set for Memphis after Nevada and several other states refused to license Tyson, largely due to the infamous press conference brawl earlier that year. With global anticipation at an all-time high, the two men entered the ring in front of a huge worldwide audience for a fight that had been nearly a decade in the making. Once the action began, it quickly became clear that the years of chaos surrounding Tyson had taken their toll, while Lewis arrived sharp, focused, and intent on making a statement. Tyson started strongly, charging forward with the aggression of old, but Lewis kept him at distance with a stiff, punishing jab and perfectly timed uppercuts. As the rounds progressed, Lewis's superior size, conditioning, and technical command took over. Tyson's face began to swell and cut under the constant impact, and his output diminished as Lewis systematically broke him down. By the middle rounds, Lewis was in full control, measuring Tyson, walking him into huge right hands, and sapping whatever remained of Tyson's resistance. In the 8th round, after absorbing a series of heavy shots, Tyson was floored twice. The second knockdown left him on his back as the referee completed the count. Lennox Lewis won by emphatic knockout, not only dominating his most famous rival, but reinforcing his status as the true heavyweight king of the era. Fight 44, 21st June 2003, Staples Center, Los Angeles, versus Vitali Klitschko, 32-1. After knocking out Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis took a year away from the ring, during which he vacated the IBF title and navigated a chaotic landscape of failed negotiations and shifting opponents. What was supposed to be a tune-up bout against Kirk Johnson collapsed when Johnson withdrew injured, leading Lewis and WBC mandatory challenger Vitali Klitschko to agree to meet far earlier than originally planned. Though not the lucrative Tyson rematch Lewis had pursued, it became one of the most dramatic heavyweight fights of the era. Klitschko entered as the underdog, but immediately proved his legitimacy, starting fast and dominating the opening rounds with aggression, heavy right hands, and constant pressure. He stunned Lewis early and opened a cut under the champion's left eye, winning the first 2 rounds convincingly. But in the third, Lewis responded like a champion, driving home a huge right hand that ripped open a deep cut above Klitschko's left eye. From that point on, the fight became a brutal, exhausting war of attrition. Both men traded powerful jabs, uppercuts, and looping rights in a ferocious battle that left them visibly drained. Klitschko fought through the worsening damage around his eye, and even regained momentum in the 4th, while Lewis turned the tide again with heavy inside shots and a savage uppercut in the 6th round that further compromised Klitschko's vision. By the end of the 6th, the challenger's left eye had become a horrific gash, prompting the ringside doctor to stop the fight before the 7th round could begin. Lewis was declared the winner by technical knockout, though Klitschko led 58-56 on all 3 judges' scorecards at the time of the stoppage. The result sparked immediate calls for a rematch, and Lewis initially showed interest. But after Klitschko defeated Kirk Johnson to officially re-earn his shot, Lewis chose not to fight again in 2003, and ultimately announced his retirement in February 2004. The Klitschko fight would stand as the final chapter of his career. One last war, one last victory, and one more reminder of his toughness, power, and championship resolve.